Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jared. I'm an atheist. It's a Tuesday night. It's 10 o'clock, and I just got back from church.
Did you like going to that church today?
Welcome back to another atheist church audit. I already said the thing. Tonight, I went to my third meeting at a Jehovah's Witness Kingdom Hall. I don't really know what sent me down this path of investigating the J-dubs, but I'm enthralled and I'm glad that I'm here now. So again, this is the third service of theirs that I have been to in the past 10 days. I went to 2 different Kingdom Halls on 2 different Sunday mornings, and then tonight I went to one of their Tuesday night services. I heard some inklings about what it was going to be like, and I was like, I gotta check that out. So before I dive into talking about all things that happen in the service, I want to express my frustration at how absolutely wonderful these people are. I'm not going to lie, man. Usually I tell people that as an atheist, I don't want to make Christians deconvert or lose their faith. That's not my MO. I want to help Christians do religion well. Now, when it comes to cults like the Jehovah's Witnesses, I'm usually a little bit more reserved.
You don't say.
Because it crosses a line where it's not just like you have a certain belief structure that might be false or that I don't agree with, but you believe something that might be harming yourself and others. Now, I have a little bit of cognitive dissonance because the people here are just so wonderful. And as I was driving home, just thinking about, the dozen or so little conversations and interactions that I had with people, I got kind of mad because I'm like, damn it, you all believe some really not okay things, and I wish that a lot of people in my life were as nice as y'all. There are just some real assholes in my life that I wish were half as nice and lovely as these people. Now, the people here were so nice that it gives me a little bit of pause when it comes to the cost-benefit ratio. Like that one person that you hate at your school or your gym? Would you trade him being an asshole for him, now being a proselyte of a fringe sect? And sometimes I'm just tempted to say yes, damn it. And I have to start this video by just commending these people, because for all of the faults that I'm about to point out, they've got it down pat. Okay, so, oh gosh, where to start with this whole thing? So again, I have to preface all of this by saying that I am still very new to this whole exploration of the Jehovah's Witnesses. I said this in my last video, but I have fun not going in with a whole bunch of presuppositions about what these people are going to be like. I like just raw dogging it, jumping in there, exploring the unknown, and figuring out their doctrines and practices and belief as I go. All of this, take this with a grain of salt. This is my unfiltered thoughts. This is my journal expressing my confusion and confliction as I go and navigate these uncharted territories. Man, so, oh gosh, the service started at 7:30, it let out at 9:30, and I think I took 4 pages of notes.
Stop writing.
So their midweek service looks a little bit different than their Sunday morning service. Their Sunday morning service has kind of like a Bible Q&A, which is really just them reading line by line through the Watchtower magazine, the magazine that their organization sends to every single church all throughout the world. During their midweek service, they do a similar thing. They sing some songs, they have a talk, a sermon, they watch a short educational video that the Watchtower provides them.
So I think we're just returning what Jehovah gave us.
And then they do a couple of skits.
Saturday Night Live.
And these were interesting. A little weird, but very interesting, and we'll get to those. So the troubling thing that I have seen through all 3 of these services is this recurring theme of continuing to be faithful in the midst of an evil world. That is everything in the Jehovah's Witness faith. It comes up again and again in their sermons. It is every song that they sing. It is half of the Bible verses that they reference. They are just so hung up with you possibly leaving and telling you everything they can to say, well, you got to stay on the straight and narrow. Don't let the devil tempt you away. If you're talking to somebody who gives you information about the Jehovah's Witness faith that isn't complimentary, you better run away. Just to like set the tone of things. The opening hymn that they sing, which again, there's no band, there's no choir. It is literally like a dude in the back hitting play on a CD, and then, you know, everyone sings to kind of this like MIDI orchestral track. And all but one of the songs that I've heard in all three of these meetings, literally all of them except for one, are sung with God being in the third person, which is a stark contrast from every other denomination in Christendom. For Jehovah's Witnesses, it's way more common to sing about God in the third person because it's like a marching song rather than a worship song. Hey there, it's future Jared. It is very late and I'm very sleepy, but I got curious and I wanted some data to back this up. So I went through every single song in their hymnal, Sing Out Joyfully to Jehovah, and analyzed the lyrics of all 158 of their hymns. Based on my counting, and take this with a grain of salt because I can't really count or read or anything, out of 158 songs, 50 are directed towards Jehovah and 108 are not directed towards Jehovah. So less than a third. So they'll sing things and say like, we're in these latter days and there's trouble all around and we'll continue to put our faith in God so that we can make it to the end. He's super duper great and we love him and we love the leaders that God has put in our midst to lead us because we can't lead ourselves. Like it's not for God. You're not there in church for Jehovah. You're there to reiterate to you what you ought to be doing. Which like there's a part of that that's fine and good, I guess. But there's like zero emphasis on, you know, a personal spiritual relationship with Jesus, which even in like Orthodox settings, Catholic settings, Mormon settings, they all have a sense of feeling God in your heart. And I feel like emotions are contraband here. You're allowed to be nice, you're allowed to be smiley, you're allowed to be kind, but even when talking about like really troubling issues, there is no allowance for emotion. And it's really unsettling. More about that when we talk about these skits. So again, the way that they like depict the world and reality and life and the state of things. It is like there's a white picket fence inside of the Kingdom Hall and your friends and family who are all members of the Jehovah's Witness faith. And then outside there are, you know, bars and hookers and lines of coke and devilish temptations and fiery infernos. And you should stay inside of this fence. You should stay inside of this fold.
Don't go out there. What do you think, I'm nuts?
There was a quote from the sermon that I wrote down. The guy speaking said, Satan wants you to turn your back on Jehovah and turn away from what you have learned. Which, like, there's nothing, you know, anti-biblical about that. I mean, yes, everyone would agree with that. But it becomes unsettling when that is the core and the crux of your message. Like, the biggest concern in this church is you possibly leaving the church. Now, I understand that's a big deal for all Christians of all stripes. But imagine that like we're at a family reunion and my Aunt Barb is like, well, Jared, we're still cool, right? We're still cool? Okay. I just want to make sure that we're still cool. All right. Have some turkey. Also, I do want to make sure that we're still cool and that I will see you again next Christmas, right? Okay, excellent. Also, will I be seeing you at Easter? If our entire relationship was built on your confidence of me staying in the relationship, there's a problem.
Wait, don't leave, please.
What other relationship is like that? Like, if I had a girlfriend who was so insecure as to make her entire interaction with me all about whether or not I'm ever going to leave her, I would be like, babe, this is not healthy. Queen, see someone. Have you tried BetterHelp? Sponsored by BetterHelp? I'm not sponsored by BetterHelp. I will not be sponsored by BetterHelp, don't worry. Wouldn't that be a great segue though? Come on. It just strikes me as like so bizarre that the church is so insecure about the possibility of you leaving. Like, it's a big deal, but surely there's gotta be other priorities that are higher. You know, like you taking care of your friends and family. But so far in the 3 services that I've been to, this is the biggest thing. You staying in the fold of God. Even more so than worshiping God. Like, what the hell is the point of all this? It's to keep you safe from, presumably what I've, gathered so far is the imminent destruction of the world and the end of all things. But like, then what? Like, what is the goal in the afterlife? I really enjoy that line from the Westminster Catechism or whatever about the chief end of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. That's pretty cool. But this just feels like all of it, this whole shindig. Like, the goal of heaven is just to say, well, you made it. Congratulations, you stayed in. You didn't get booted off the island. And guys, from an outsider's perspective, this is the biggest cult thing that I've ever, seen in cultism. Normal, healthy churches are not obsessed with the possibility of people leaving. Normal, healthy communities are not based on this fear of somebody leaving, of somebody walking away. So going back to emotional regulation, I've gotten the sense that emotions are suspect here. So let's get into the rest of the service. In between a couple of songs, a couple of different talks led by different people, all in the same, very straightforward, unintimidating, unintrusive voice. In addition to that, they did 2 skits.
We could do a role play,
which were literally like a breakdown play-by-play in these kind of like contrived conversations that you might have with somebody on the street regarding the Jehovah's Witness faith. So 2 by 2, these, pairs of women got up to the microphones and they acted out this skit. They acted out this simulation. And so they kind of read from their scripts and they were like, hello, I noticed that you were reading a self-help book. Can I tell you about something that helped me in my life? Well, you see, I don't mean to be imposing on your worldview or anything, but I read the Bible when I'm sad. Can I write down some Bible verses that might help you feel better in your time of need? Wow, that's very interesting. The Bible, huh? Well, I've always been kind of a religious seeker. I would be happy to read some Bible verses. That's excellent. How about we exchange phone numbers and then we can get together and talk about them sometime next week? Wow, I would really like that. Thank you for being so polite and non-intrusive with your propositions about religion. I'm so conflicted on this one because the way that they presented it is kind of how I want Christians, if they're going to proselytize, this is kind of a great way to do it. Like, they stress being polite. They stress not being overbearing. They stress being kind and taking an interest in another person's life. But what's just so bizarre to me is that you have to be coached in how to talk. And so everyone in this congregation has adopted the exact same manner of speaking. After decades of being in this church, they sound identical. Like black people, Hispanic people, white people, Asian people, they all sound identical. They've somehow been so whitewashed into adopting this, monolithic culture, and it's strange. Now, the reason why I'm torn is because, like I mentioned earlier, there are some pricks in my life that I wish went through, a simulated training on how to speak to people. Because I know some people who would benefit from cosplaying like a nice person. Oh man. So it's weird and it's strange, and I'm not ready to bash it entirely, kind of just because of how decent it was. Like, they didn't have really any misconceptions about how a real conversation might go. It just feels clammy. Oh man, okay. So after they do the skit, one of the speakers comes up and he commends them and he's like, excellent job, Tina. I love the way that you directed them to the jw.org website. You took an interest in their life. You made a point to pause to let her speak and have her turn in the conversation. So it's like weird and bizarre that you have like a manners class baked into your church service. I'm not opposed to it because clearly it's working. Like, I'm not any closer to converting to the Jehovah's Witness faith, but I certainly had a wonderful time talking to y'all. So the skit is weird, like fine, but it's interesting. But I want to talk about, some of the recurring things that I've heard over and over and over again in these services that is very bizarre. Number one, I have heard probably half a dozen times now that they do not take offerings. If you look on their website, it will be mentioned in, any paragraph that, invites visitors to come and visit that no collections will ever be taken. And they really pride themselves on like not taking an offering for some reason. I guess because they're really trying to stress like, hey, we're not money hungry, televangelists here.
If you're not a giver, you're a loser.
And that's fine, I guess, but it does feel kind of strange that it's like advertised like that. Like, using my Aunt Barb as an example again. I love my Aunt Barb, she's great. If I went over to her house for dinner and, then for the rest of the night she was like, and Jared, not to brag, but you know how I didn't charge you for that extra slice of ham? That's just kind of my thing. That's what I do. Wouldn't it be kind of weird? Like, I have eyes. I can see that, a collection plate is not passed around. I don't know. Maybe if you are a former member of the United House of Prayer for All People,
Christ, man of God, any believers in this man of God,
maybe you'll come to this place and be like, wow, it's affordable. But it's weird that they brag about it. The other thing that they continually brag about is how, well, son, if you come to this church, every church in the world that is a part of the Jehovah's Witness community, they're also reading the same thing, which is cool, I guess. I mean, it gives them like a sense of unity, but beyond that, like it's fine, I guess. I don't really know what the deal is. You know what would be kind of beautiful? Everyone getting together and celebrating a holiday, like Christmas or Easter. Oh man, all the Christians in the world, they're doing the same thing at the same time. Isn't that neat? And now maybe the third and the final thing that I have heard the most often is, I love this place because it's the only place that really teaches Bible principles. And that's one of their unique phrases, Bible principles. But to their credit, they quote the Bible ad nauseum here. It is Bible verse after Bible verse after Bible verse. However, they tend to be very, very, very shallow interpretations. Maybe very, very, very is too many varies. But their methodology for interpreting the scriptures, it's never wrestling with them. It's proof texting things. So, if there's an issue that they're wrestling with, they'll say, well, there's this verse that says it, and this verse, and this verse, and that's that. But like, if I were to say, well, how would you juxtapose the contradiction about Judas Iscariot in Mark's gospel from Matthew's gospel, from John's gospel? Or if I were to say, oh yeah, that's a very interesting point. There's further elucidation about that in the martyrdom of Polycarp. And my hunch is they would be like, who the hell is that? Or if you were to try to like justify a position based on church history or like apostolic succession, or, critical exegesis of a text, it would just be like, well, nope, that's not what the text says. Like if you were to try to like fill in the gaps about, King Herod or mention something about Josephus, it just feels like they would be like, well, yeah, but that's not what the text says. And so case in point, I've always known about Jehovah's Witnesses that they don't like blood transfusions. And I didn't really know how like legit that was, because with all of these sects, there's hearsay and rumors. Shit, I mean, in the ancient world, they said that Christians were, incestuous monsters who were like killing babies and drinking blood. So, rumors can spread. But tonight, after only being there for 3 meetings, they brought up blood transfusions. And I didn't know how they got there, but they pulled up the verse. So in Acts 15:28, the apostles send a letter to one of the churches, and it says, "For it has seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to impose on you no further burden than the essentials, that you abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what is strangled, and from fornication." So he says these 4 things, don't do it. Somehow they took that verse and got from it that you shouldn't do blood transfusions. So this passage that's like very clearly about, not consuming blood or meat that's been sacrificed to idols, they somehow took that and were like, yeah, well, this is what the Bible says. This is the Bible principle that you ought not to get a blood transfusion, something that wasn't going to be a thing for like 1800 years. Do you really think that that's what the apostles meant when they wrote that in the 1st century? That there were people going around being like, hey, take some of my blood. Are you O positive? What the hell is that? And I didn't really realize how big of a deal that was until I was, asking ChatGPT in the middle of service, how many people a year in the US get a blood transfusion? 5 million. And I just wasn't thinking. I was like, oh, blood transfusion. I haven't gotten one of those lately. Yeah, but if you're in a car wreck and you're bleeding out, the church's official position is you are disobedient to God if you get a blood transfusion because of this crappy interpretation of this obscure verse. I'm not gonna lie, I think that this was somebody's crappy interpretation in maybe the 1920s or 30s, and then it got proliferated throughout the church, and then in order to save face, they never updated their position. They never could say, hey, actually, maybe our interpretation was kind of fucking stupid here. And so now they have an official policy in place that is dogma, that says you cannot get this life-saving operation. And it is bananas to me. And like it was literally said in the sermon that Satan may use life-threatening illnesses to try to pressure us into questioning the things of God. Like, am I on a different planet here? It isn't even that like there is a religious or moral injunction to do something. It's that this interpretation is so contrived and so baseless. I don't understand how you walk away being like, that's what it meant. It's like so baseless and so silly, and you're not allowed to use, your rational faculties to argue your way around it because the church has stuck their claim on this. And well, this is kind of our whole shindig now. And then after years and decades and centuries, people are just kind of like, yeah, this is kind of our thing and we don't really know why. And yeah, maybe if I took a second look at that verse, it's very clearly not talking about blood transfusions. God, okay, sorry, I'm harping. So when I think about these people, and it's like, if I could snap my fingers and wish something for them, what would I want for them? Now, on the one hand, I don't want them to be any less nice than they currently are. These are some of the nicest, friendliest people I've ever met. And I'm sure that they inherited a lot of that niceness from this church. But if that comes at the cost of them actively rejecting medical necessities, like life-saving medical interventions, guys. So anyway, there's so much to unpack here, man. Their services are some of the most boring, but unique and interesting that I've been to. I'm just fascinated by this whole shindig. And I haven't even gotten to talk about the thing that pisses me off most about Jehovah's Witnesses, and that is the disfellowshipping. But we'll get there. I don't think that this will be my last time going to a Kingdom Hall, so stay tuned. So that is a wrap. My name's Jared. I'm an atheist. Go to church, or a Kingdom Hall, or a synagogue. Ooh, haven't been in one of those in a while. I don't know why I clicked and winked. Jared, what do you do at 10:51 p.m.? Oh, I make videos about Jehovah's Witnesses and stupid shit.